Welcome to Check This Out, podcast for kids.
And their grown-ups, where we explore interesting people, places, and ponderings that shape the world around us. My name is Amy Contreras.
And I'm Cece.
And we are excited to welcome you to episode 5 of Check This Out. At Check This Out, we discuss everything from the history of sports to famous scientists and inventors to the 7 wonders of the world. In today's episode, we are going to learn more about an amazing woman who escaped enslavement and helped others escape enslavement as well. I hope you're as excited as I am to talk about Harriet Tubman. She was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, a patriot, a spy, a nurse, and a feminist. And that's just a few of the ways Harriet made an impact on the world around her.
She was a busy lady.
You may already know her name, but after today's episode, you're going to know so much more about how she helped people around her. Let's get into it.
Listeners, keep your ears open.
Because at the end of the episode, we will share 3 facts with you that you can continue to check out on your own. We hope you use the Check This Out podcast as a tool to fuel your own learning journey. So keep those ears open and see if you can guess which facts we will highlight at the end. Now, let's start by seeing what you already know about Harriet Tubman. And if it's nothing, then take your best guess. Let's do a lightning round of true or false questions. Cece, hit it.
True or false?
Harriet Tubman is alive today. The answer is false. Harriet Tubman died in 1913.
True or false?
Harriet Tubman saved over 50 people from enslavement. The answer is true. Harriet Tubman actually saved about 70 people from slavery.
True or false?
Harriet Tubman wrote 2 books in her life. That answer is false. She never wrote a book, but did authorize an author named Sarah Bradford to write a book about her life called Harriet, the Moses of her people.
True or false?
Harriet Tubman was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. The answer is true. I hope you knew that one. I did say it as I was introducing the episode.
True or false?
Harriet Tubman was born a free Black woman in 1820. The answer is false. She was born into enslavement. We will talk more about her journey to freedom in this episode.
True or false?
Harriet Tubman was a soldier in the Civil War. The answer is false, but she did a lot in the Civil War to help by taking on lots of different jobs like nurse, spy, and cook.
True or false?
Harriet Tubman is on the $20 bill. The answer is false, but only for a little while because there are plans to replace the image of Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill with Harriet Tubman. Nice work on those true or false questions. And if you got them all wrong, have no fear. We are going to take a walk through Harriet Tubman's life and get to know her more deeply.
Check this out.
Before we dive in, do you know what the Underground Railroad was?
Tell us.
The Underground Railroad was a secret network of people and safe houses that were organized to help enslaved people escape to freedom.
Whoa!
The Underground Railroad was part of the resistance to slavery. It assisted enslaved people with escaping from the South. This matters because the Underground Railroad was a key part of Harriet Tubman's life. Harriet Tubman was born in Maryland as an enslaved person. This means that records of when she was born aren't the most reliable. We know she was born around 1820. Some accounts say 1822, others say 1821. So for our purposes, we'll just say around 1820.
That was a long time ago.
Her birth name was Araminta Ross, but she later took her mother's name, Harriet, when she married John Tubman in 1844. Harriet had several names and nicknames throughout her life. I'm going to list a couple of nicknames. See if you can guess which ones belonged to her. Were her nicknames Harry, Moses, Train Girl, Conductor, Minty, or Tubbers? If you guessed Moses, Conductor, and Minty, you're right. I I don't know that she would have loved being called Tubbers.
No way.
As we mentioned earlier, Harriet was born into enslavement, meaning she and her family were forced to work without pay and had no freedom. This meant from a young age, she did hard labor and worked in various jobs such as being a woodcutter and a field worker. When Harriet was around 12 years old, there was a violent incident between Harriet, a slave overseer, and a fugitive slave. During the incident, the overseer hit Harriet on the head with an iron weight and badly injured her.
How sad.
This injury turned into a sleeping disorder called narcolepsy. She had head pain throughout her life as a result, and ultimately had to get brain surgery years later in 1898. Interesting fact about that surgery, she opted to not go under anesthesia for her brain surgery. Can you imagine? She stayed awake and bit a bullet for the pain. This was something she had seen soldiers in the Civil War do.
She sounds really brave.
In 1849, when Harriet was in her late 20s, she heard she might be sold to another owner, so she opted to escape enslavement and run to the north where she could live freely. This meant she had to leave behind her husband because he refused to leave. She also left her parents and siblings.
That must have been hard.
After she experienced freedom, Harriet wanted to emancipate others. She believed in emancipation for all enslaved people.
Check this out.
Do you know what emancipation means? It's the process of being set free from legal, social, or political restrictions. In other words, it was all about liberating other enslaved people.
That is cool.
In December of 1850, she ran her first rescue mission, emancipating her niece and 2 children. Between 1850 and 1860, Harriet Tubman made over a dozen journeys across the Mason-Dixon line into the South, bringing about 70 enslaved people north to freedom. She eventually led her 3 brothers to freedom as well in 1854. Harriet Tubman was known as a meticulous planner within the Underground Railroad. She shared her plans with other conductors on the Underground Railroad. This resulted in another 50 to 60 enslaved people being helped to freedom by her plans. Harriet Tubman's dedication and success on the Underground Railroad earned her the nickname Moses. It was said she never lost someone she was leading to freedom. Harriet Tubman's role in the Underground Railroad is what made her famous. She was often wanted and written about in newspapers because what she was doing was technically illegal because slavery was still allowed in the South at that time. There were even rewards for her capture. But this also helped her get connected with abolitionists and politicians in the North where slavery was not permitted. It helped her connect with critical people based in the northern United States and Canada who were also fighting against slavery in the South.
Check this out.
Abolitionists were people who were against slavery and wanted to abolish it or get rid of it. Because of Harriet's notoriety, she was recruited to get involved when the American Civil War started in 1861. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Harriet Tubman held many roles throughout the Civil War. This included nursing soldiers, recruiting Black soldiers, cooking, and even sometimes stepping into the role of being a scout and a spy.
She was a busy lady.
In the summer of 1863, Harriet became the first woman to ever lead a military operation in U.S. history. She helped coordinate a military assault that resulted in more than 700 people being freed from slavery in Combahee Ferry, South Carolina.
What an amazing story!
How much do you think Harriet Tubman was paid for her contributions to the Civil War? Something that makes me sad is that although she spent years helping win the Civil War through her various roles and contributions, Harriet was paid so little for her work in the Civil War, she had to sell homemade baked goods on the side just to survive. Eventually, she received a $20 per month pension from the U.S. government for her efforts. but she had to apply multiple times, and the pension didn't come until 34 years after the Civil War had ended.
What?
After the Civil War and the abolishment of slavery, Harriet Tubman moved to New York, and she continued her legacy of helping others. She worked with politicians and other abolitionists like Frederick Douglass, William Henry Seward, Susan B. Anthony, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and more. In New York, she helped create schools for freed Blacks. She also co-founded the National Association of Colored Women in 1896. This organization demanded equality and suffrage for African American women.
Check this out.
Suffrage means fighting for the right to vote. Keep in mind, Black women were not permitted to vote in the United States until 1965. In 1908, Harriet Tubman purchased 25 acres of land with the hopes of opening the Harriet Tubman Home of the Aged to improve the lives of the old and poor in the community. Unfortunately, she couldn't raise funds to open the facility, and she gave the property to a church in exchange for them operating the home. The home operated from 1908 until the early 1920s, and Harriet herself was a patient there until she died in 1913. We still learn about Harriet Tubman today because of her bravery, impact, and how she led through action in the Underground Railroad, the Civil War, and in her advocacy and philanthropic work until the end of her life. At the start of the episode, Cece told you to keep your ears open because we would give you 3 facts we'd love for you to check out later. I wonder if you can guess what they'll be.
Here are 3 of our favorite facts.
Fact number 1. Harriet Tubman was the first woman in U.S. history to lead a military raid. Check out more about the Combahee Ferry raid. Fact number 2. Harriet Tubman took 13 separate trips to the South and saved about 70 people from enslavement. When you check this out, make sure to learn about why 13 trips south of the Mason-Dixon line was so dangerous and impressive. Fact number 3. Harriet fought for the rights of others and for the dignity of others until the end of her life. Learn more about the institutions she helped create after the Civil War. Harriet Tubman accomplished so much. How will we ever remember it? Well, here at Check This Out, we don't just love investigating cool people, places, and ponderings.
We also love to rhyme.
Here is a poem we created about Harriet Tubman to help you remember a bit more about her. In Maryland's fields, young Minty did toil. With dreams of freedom from slavery, she recoiled. She heard the call, escape, don't delay. As an Underground Railroad conductor, she lit the way. Through nights full of danger, but with courage so bright, she freed many souls, bringing hope and delight. Her path was long, her impacts were many. When the Civil War came, she was more than ready. All her life, helping others was her aim. Today we honor her and celebrate her fame. At Check This Out, we know it can be hard to know if information you find online is accurate. We use verified sources to build the stories you hear about. Our sources for this week's episode are Encyclopedia Britannica, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Women's History Museum, History.com, and the National Park Service. If you enjoy listening to Check This Out, please consider subscribing and giving us 5 stars. Don't forget to share with friends who have kids as well, who are looking for a fun and educational podcast they can listen to together. In the meantime, we'll see you for our next episode.
Thanks for listening.